And new development in the search at Mar-A-Lago. The Justice Department has granted former Trump advisor Kash Patel immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony to the grand jury investigation, the handling of federal documents. The Justice Department subpoenaed Patel to the grand jury in October. At the time, he asserted his Fifth Amendment right from self-incrimination. Patel has not been charged with any crime. His grand jury appearance has not been scheduled yet.
Adam here. Let's start. There was a moment when the entire classified documents defense shifted from something Trump could actually rely on to something that collapsed under its own weight. It did not happen in a packed courtroom with cameras rolling. It did not happen during some dramatic cross-examination that goes viral on every platform. It happened in a federal grand jury room in Washington, D.C.
NBC News has learned Trump loyalist Kash Patel is expected to testify soon before a federal grand jury about the documents and Trump's public claims, which Patel has repeated and backed, that he declassified the records he took with him to Mar-A-Lago. The New York Times is reporting that the U.S. Justice Department offered Kash Patel immunity after a federal judge ruled that would be the only way to force him to testify under oath. The New York Times reports this: the decision effectively cleared the way for his testimony and makes moot his Fifth Amendment and self-incrimination claims. And it now makes Patel the steadfast, loyal Trump confidant whom Trump handpicked to deal with the documents and the National Archives.
Where Kash Patel sat alone with prosecutors and gave sworn testimony that legal insiders say completely failed to back up the declassification story Trump's operation had been selling for 2 years. Here is why that moment matters more than anything you have seen on cable news.
Now to FBI Director Kash Patel, who has fired at least 6 agents tied to the 2022 search of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. That's what 6 people familiar with the matter tell NBC News. But 3 of those sources say at least 10 employees were ultimately dismissed. As you may recall, the FBI search was connected to the federal investigation into President Trump's handling of classified documents after he left the White House in 2021. He had pleaded not guilty and denied any wrongdoing. That case was ultimately dismissed by a judge who was appointed by President Trump. Monica, walk us through what we've learned about these employees who were fired, and has there been any response from the White House or the FBI at this point?
Yeah, you mentioned that there were those agents we know were dismissed, about 6 of them, but in total, we're told that these were 10 employees who worked for the FBI. So that ranges to actual agents, to support personnel, and even including supervisors. And the FBI itself has not commented on this beyond a statement from the FBI director himself, Kash Patel, who is speaking out about a matter that appears to be connected to this overall, which we're going to get to in a moment. But
Patel was not some peripheral figure in this defense. He was the centerpiece. He was the name Trump's allies kept dropping whenever anyone asked how classified documents ended up at Mar-a-Lago. They pointed to Patel as the insider who could confirm the standing declassification order, the person who would testify that Trump exercised his presidential authority before leaving office to declassify everything he took with him, making the entire prosecution a legal fiction. That was the shield. Patel was the shield. And then the Department of Justice did something that changed everything. They went to a federal judge and obtained an immunity order. That order stripped away Patel's Fifth Amendment protection. It compelled him to testify under penalty of perjury. The same man who had been pointing to for 2 years as the ultimate insider confirmation of the defense narrative was now legally required to answer every question prosecutors had. No more silence. No more strategic ambiguity. No more television appearances where he could hint at secret knowledge without actually committing to anything under oath. The shield became a sword in that grand jury room. And now that sword is being wielded from the FBI director's chair in ways that make the underlying problem worse every single week. Patel is currently firing agents who worked the original Mar-a-Lago investigation. At least 10 employees ousted in what sources and the FBI Agents Association describe as retaliatory purges. Every firing keeps the classified documents scandal in the headlines. Every firing reminds the public the probe was serious enough to produce criminal charges. Every firing makes it look less like vindication and more like a revenge campaign screaming consciousness of guilt from the top floor of FBI headquarters. Let me walk you through exactly how this unfolded, because the mechanics matter. The immunity order came down in 2022. Patel had initially taken the fifth and refused to answer questions about how Trump handled and claimed to declassify the documents. Prosecutors made a strategic calculation. They decided the inside knowledge Patel possessed was valuable enough to force out under oath. They sought and obtained a use immunity order from a federal judge. That order removed his Fifth Amendment shield and compelled him to testify about the specific questions the grand jury was investigating. In exchange for that protection, Patel lost the right to stay silent. He had to answer under oath with perjury consequences for any false answer. Legal analysts who have summarized what is known of that testimony say two things happened. First, Patel did not confirm the broad-standing declassification order that Trump's public narrative had been built around. Second, he acknowledged that proper declassification procedures were not followed. Those two admissions dismantle the declassification defense at both its evidentiary and doctrinal levels simultaneously. Think about what that means. The best-positioned confirming witness for the standing order theory did not confirm it under oath. Before the immunity grant, Patel was free to characterize events in whatever way served the defense narrative. He could imply the existence of a declassification mechanism without making the specific factual claim that perjury consequences would attach to. In the grand jury room, with perjury on the line, strategic ambiguity was no longer available. He declined to make the claim. That declination under oath is more evidentiary powerful than any amount of media advocacy can counter. And on the doctrinal level, his acknowledgement that proper declassification procedures were not followed directly addresses the regulatory framework question. The rules governing declassification require specific documentation, specific notification to originating agencies, specific record keeping. A presidential intention to declassify that is not documented through those required processes and not communicated through the required channels does not constitute legally effective declassification. Patel's testimony confirming the procedures were not followed validates the doctrinal problem from the inside. Now, here is where the perjury lock becomes the most important mechanism in the entire story. Before the immunity grant, Patel had made public statements suggesting the standing order theory was viable. Those statements were not under oath. They could be revised, walked back, or recharacterized as the legal landscape shifted. After the immunity grant and the grand jury testimony, the situation is fundamentally different. Patel's sworn account is fixed in the grand jury record under penalty of perjury. If he subsequently returns to media appearances or congressional testimony and advances a version of events that contradicts what he told the grand jury, he faces perjury exposure for the contradiction. That is the specific legal mechanism that makes compelled immunity testimony more valuable to prosecutors than voluntary cooperation. A voluntary cooperator can change their account if the political or personal calculus shifts. A witness whose testimony is locked in under oath cannot change their account without accepting criminal consequences. The locked-in testimony stays in the record. It is the prosecution's evidence, and no amount of political management from any position, including the FBI director's chair, can retrieve it from where the immunity grant placed it. But the damage does not stop there. The Senate Judiciary Committee has issued a memo branding Patel an extreme MAGA grifter and not a credible witness. The memo cites a state court finding that Patel's January 6 testimony was illogical and completely devoid of any evidence in the record. A court has already formally found his testimony illogical and without evidentiary support. That finding provides every subsequent court and every subsequent prosecutor with a documented basis for challenging his credibility before he even opens his mouth. The credibility destruction is cumulative and compounding. The immunity testimony that did not confirm the defense theory undercuts his value as a defense witness from the substance side. The state court finding that his prior testimony was illogical and devoid of evidentiary support undercuts his value from the credibility side. The Senate Judiciary Memo puts the cumulative credibility problem into the official congressional record, where it is available to every future proceeding. Trump cannot safely put Patel on the stand at trial. If Patel testifies consistently with his television version of events, prosecutors confront him with the grand jury testimony. If Patel testifies consistently with the grand jury testimony, he undermines the declassification defense. And if he tries to navigate between those two versions, the prior illogical and devoid of evidence finding is available to attack whatever testimony he offers. There is no clean path through that evidentiary minefield. Now let me address the FBI purge, because this is the dimension that is actively generating new accountability scrutiny every week. Patel has ordered the ouster of at least 10 employees involved in the original Mar-A-Lago documents investigation. Sources and the FBI Agents Association describe these as retaliatory firings, payback for the agents' roles in an investigation that produced criminal charges against Trump. The specific problem with conducting a retaliatory purge from the FBI director's chair is that every firing confirms the original investigation's seriousness. You do not fire people for participating in a witch hunt that was entirely without merit. You fire them because what they found and documented was real and consequential enough to generate the specific professional grievance that retaliation is designed to address. Every agent fired is the Trump operation confirming through its own retaliatory conduct that the investigation produced exactly the kind of serious evidentiary record that the operation has been publicly characterizing as fabricated. The FBI Agents Association's public pushback describing the firings as weakening the Bureau is keeping the Mar-A-Lago scandal in current news cycles. A revenge purge from the FBI director's chair is the least effective possible strategy for someone whose primary interest is making the classified document story go away. It is the opposite of going away. It is the document story on the front page every week, framed as a powerful official using institutional authority to punish people for doing their jobs in an investigation the official cannot legally undo. Use immunity is not a legal favor extended to a witness. It is a prosecutorial weapon specifically designed to take the Fifth Amendment shield away from the person most capable of undermining the defense. The DOJ's decision to seek the immunity order in the Patel case was a calculation that the inside knowledge he possessed was worth the cost of immunizing him against personal prosecution based on the compelled testimony. That calculation was correct. The testimony is locked in. The shield became the sword. Trump's operation lost the primary silence maintenance mechanism the moment the federal judge signed the immunity order. The credibility destruction compounds the testimony problem in the specific way that makes Patel most dangerous to Trump as a potential trial witness. The immunity testimony that did not confirm the defense theory undercuts him from the substance side. The state court finding that his prior testimony was illogical and devoid of evidentiary support undercuts him from the credibility side. The Senate Judiciary Memo puts both problems in the official congressional record. Trump cannot safely call Patel at trial because every path through his testimony either confirms the prosecution's narrative or exposes him to perjury. The FBI purge is the most self-defeating strategic decision in the entire Trump documents defense landscape. If the goal is making the Mar-A-Lago story recede from public attention, firing at least 10 agents who worked the original investigation achieves the opposite. It generates new news cycles, new scrutiny, and new accountability demands that keep the investigation's seriousness in public view every week. If the goal is demonstrating the original investigation was a witch hunt without merit, firing the people who conducted it communicates instead that what they found was consequential enough to generate specific retaliatory grievance from the most powerful law enforcement official in the country. The Patel story is the most complete expression of the own words and own loyalty trap we have seen throughout this entire accountability landscape. The Fifth Amendment was the primary protection. Immunity stripped it. The public media advocacy was the narrative strategy. Perjury consequences locked the contrary sworn account in its place. The loyal insider was the evidentiary anchor. The state court credibility finding and the Senate Judiciary Memo cut the anchor loose from both directions. The FBI director's chair was supposed to be the institutional power that could finally put the document story behind them. Instead, it is the platform from which the retaliatory purge is generating new accountability scrutiny every week. Every element of the strategy built around Patel's loyalty has encountered a specific legal or institutional tool that neutralized it. The immunity stripped the silence. The perjury locked the account. The credibility findings compounded the damage. The purge extended the story rather than ending it. The loyal shield has become a multi-directional liability. The document's defense that was built around the specific expectation that Patel would protect it is now being conducted around the specific reality that the legal system has converted his inside knowledge into the prosecution's evidence and his credibility problems into the defense's burden. So, where does this leave us right now? It leaves us with a federal grand jury immunity order having stripped Patel's Fifth Amendment protection and compelled sworn testimony that did not confirm the standing declassification order and acknowledged that proper declassification procedures were not followed. Testimony locked in under perjury consequences in the permanent federal investigation record. The perjury lock preventing any walkback of the sworn account without criminal exposure. The television version of the story and the grand jury version cannot be reconciled in any subsequent proceeding without one of them becoming evidence of perjury. The Senate Judiciary memo's not a credible witness characterization, and the state court finding that his prior testimony was illogical and devoid of evidentiary support, compounding the credibility destruction from two independent directions simultaneously. The FBI purge of at least 10 agents who worked the original investigation, generating new accountability scrutiny every week. The retaliatory conduct that keeps the document's scandal's seriousness in public view and communicates through the administration's own actions that what those agents found was consequential enough to generate specific institutional revenge. The next immunity application. The next agent firing that the FBI Agents Association pushes back on publicly. The next proceeding where the grand jury account is deployed against the television version of the declassification story. Each one adds another dimension to the accountability record that the Patel loyalty strategy was designed to prevent from existing and that the legal system's specific tools have been building anyway. One compelled testimony and one retaliatory firing at a time.